Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. I know we've been a little light on good martinis lately, but I regret to tell you, and I'm sure you're not surprised if you paid attention to the news at all over the weekend, that we have no good martinis today. Officially, they're all bad. A couple of them have a twinge of crazy to them, but nonetheless, let's start with the one that broke yesterday. Jim, this was probably inevitable given what we've seen over the past several months, really since the Hamas attacks in Israel, which is now nearly 4 months ago. Iranian-backed militia groups, Houthis and others, causing trouble, launching drone attacks and other assaults against American forces in the Middle East. According to Reuters, 150 times, at least, American forces in the Middle East have been attacked by Iranian-backed forces in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and off the coast of Yemen since the Hamas attacks in Israel. But Sunday, they killed 3 Americans. They injured at least 34 others by the latest casualty count I've seen, several of them in critical condition, thankfully stable, but obviously still very, very serious situation here. This occurred near a remote outpost known as Tower 22 near Jordan's northeastern border with Syria. Jim, Biden puts out a statement, sends condolences to the family, promises that there will be a response at the time of our choosing, which we've certainly heard before. In previous strikes, he's gone after militia ammunition depot. There were harsher strikes in Yemen after the attacking of ships in the Red Sea and so forth. Now he's in more of obviously a serious situation. There needs to be a response. I would argue a disproportionate response. But what it should be is the difficult part here, because on the one hand, you've got folks like, Lindsey Graham, who wanted to bomb Iran even before any Americans had been killed in these attacks. And now he wants to hit them hard and hit them now. And John Cornyn saying target Tehran. So something needs to happen. We don't want to turn this into a massive conflagration in the Middle East, but Iran needs to get the message. They obviously haven't gotten the message yet. Slamming down the sanctions once again, I think, would be an effective tool. But first of all, what's your reaction to the news and what the correct response is here?
It sounds like an air defense system that usually would be protecting the troops in that area didn't function the way it was supposed to. But I think you look at this, you look at 150 attacks since October, and you're basically, if you fire enough missiles and enough drones at enough U.S. facilities across the Middle East, sooner or later you're going to kill somebody. We can take great pride that the first 150 or so attacks did not kill any Americans. Caused quite a few injuries. We should not hand wave that away, but this was almost inevitable. That as long as Iran was going to keep attacking, sooner or later they were going to hit something valuable and they were going to kill our people. There's a quote in the Wall Street Journal's House editorial about this morning that I think just very succinctly summarizes it. Mr. Biden has spent months fretting about a broader regional war without confronting the reality that the U.S. already is one. The result is that U.S. deterrence has collapsed in the region and Americans are dying. The other thing is it was about 2 weeks ago, middle of January, President Biden is in Emmons, Pennsylvania, and he's doing a tour of, you're going to think I'm making this up, Nowhere Coffee Company. And the first question during the very brief exchange with reporters was, do you have a message for Iran, sir? And Biden responded, this is back on January 12th, quote, I've already delivered the message to Iran. They know not to do anything, unquote. Now, I don't know if our 81-year-old president is just rambling. Biden was never the most accurate speaker before age kicked in. I don't know if this is senility. I don't know if this is blind denial. I don't know if this is naive optimism that maybe the mullahs are going to be nicer after this. I think we can safely say is that the message delivered to Iran was rejected. They don't feel deterred. They don't feel intimidated. And no, Mr. President, they don't know not to do anything. They are continuing to attack. And your attitude towards this has been pretty much to deny it or to minimize it from the very beginning of this conflict. Where we have a message to everyone else in the region who want to broaden this war. Don't. No one is intimidated by this president. I put out I just published a corner post where I just go through all the different times and all the different areas in which Biden or his members of his cabinet have assured us that their policies are, quote, carefully calibrated, unquote. Sometimes you get the word that their responses are proportionate, and they keep emphasizing that nothing they do is escalatory. Well, if you decide and you announce to the world that all of your responses will be proportionate, that means the enemy gets to decide how hard you punch back. And the thing is, that doesn't deter anyone. It's proven. We just see it right here. It does not deter anyone. What would deter someone is they don't know how hard you're going to hit back, and that someday when they do hit you, you hit them hard back in a way that they are not prepared for. Blowing up these ammunition dumps, hey, you know what? I think the Houthis and the Iranians and all of their affiliated groups, I think they're prepared for it. I don't think they feel like they've been hit very hard. I don't think they particularly feel. Now, we have all kinds of options. I was talking with Hugh Hewitt earlier this morning. You talked about the possibility of sinking Iranian naval ships in the Persian Gulf. We could do cyber strikes. We could shut down the oil refineries in Iran. That would screw up their economy real fast. We have a lot of ways in which we could hit back at Iran, but it might be escalatory. Well, here's the thing. Proportional responses have not been effective deterrents. So you got to do something more. Now, you talk about, do you want to strike at Iran? Hey, look, that's got risks. I'm not going to deny that. But you can't look at the current policy and say, oh, yeah, that's working. There's been no effective deterrent so far. So this administration that's scared of its own shadow, terrified of taking any step that could escalate, that could, get us into a war in the Middle East, utterly in denial of the fact that we're already in a war in the Middle East. The question is, what do you want to do about it? And I think the answer from the president, to the extent that he's aware of what's going on these days, is that he just doesn't want to deal with it. And he wants to get back to the familiar topics of talking about abortion and how terrible Donald Trump is.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his issues that he much prefers to talk about here. Unfortunately, there are real issues that are happening right now, separate from the presidential campaign. You can kind of finesse the words, massage the message when there aren't any fatalities. There had been injuries, different people being treated for traumatic brain injury as a result of some of these previous drone attacks. But now you've got 3 dead and several others critically wounded. It's kind of like the last lock on the vault at Nakatomi Plaza, right? It just comes down like an anvil. You got to do something about it. And this administration doesn't seem prepared for it because their whole thing all along has been to get along better with the Iranians, no matter how badly the Iranians behave. They want to reconstitute this nuclear deal basically to burnish the Obama legacy, as far as I can tell. They ease the sanctions. They release more money. You can argue all you want about how it's not directly spent on this stuff, but it all gets spent somewhere in ways that frees up other money. And so apparently didn't quite get the message across. I mean, it's basically the diplomatic equivalent of just say no, except instead of trying to keep your kids from taking drugs, it's trying to keep bloodthirsty terrorists from attacking people they hate. It's not quite the same.
No, and going back to the first days of the Obama administration, there's just been this bizarre belief in Democratic circles that there is some sort of reasonable and trustworthy version of the Iranian regime hidden somewhere over there, and that if we just try hard enough, we will bring out a reasonable and version of that regime that we can hammer out a nuclear arms treaty with. And I keep thinking back to the Newsweek cover by Fareed Zakaria declaring everything you know about Iran is wrong. This was shortly before Iranian elections. The Iranian elections were rigged. The Iranian people got upset about it. And then we all witnessed a brutal crackdown by the regime. And it turned out that everything we knew about Iran was right. And that Fareed Zakaria, having met with the cosmopolitan, urbane, sophisticated, and much more Western Iranians, had kind of fooled himself into believing that the nature of the Iranian regime was more conciliatory and reasonable and open to discussion than it was. And it was a hard reality for everybody in Iran. It was a hard reality for Democrats. And they have an amazing ability to not learn from that. The good Iranian regime is always just around the corner with this crew. And that's what led us to this point today.
Yeah. It's not the only country that we've gone down this road and banged our head against the wall. China certainly comes to mind with both parties, regardless of who is president. Got fooled by them for generations. But, Iran has been nothing but hostile towards us since 1979. And all we keep doing is trying to believe that they're not really that bad. But they are. They really are.
4 straight presidents have talked themselves into believing I can get a reasonable deal with Putin.
All right, Jim. Somehow we're still in January. We're like only 4 weeks into this year, and it feels like we're about 4 months in after all that's happened here. And so I guess the good news is that if you've kind of sloughed off on your New Year's resolutions, you can get going again. And if better sleep is one of those things, go with Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. And right now you can get 10% off any order at bioptimizers.com/martini, and then use the promo code martini.
Look, there are a lot of magnesium supplements out there, but a bunch of them are only giving you 1 or 2 forms of magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium that are designed to help calm your mind, help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and then wake up refreshed. What's more, it helps improve digestion, supports muscle recovery, and supports healthy bone density.
So do yourself a favor and make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality you need to conquer your dreams. Go to bioptimizers.com/martini and enter the promo code martini to get 10% off any order. Again, that's bioptimizers.com/martini. bioptimizers.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our second bad martini, and there's certainly some crazy here. You know, it's maddening enough when there's not a crisis going on in the world. When you look at some of the people that Biden has in key positions, and you know they got there because they checked a demographic box, or more than one. And sometimes we just see their incompetence on display regularly. One of those, of course, is Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary who replaced Jen Psaki. And we know that if she's not staring at her binder, her ability to answer a even routine question can sometimes become an adventure. So yesterday, of course, we find out pretty early yesterday about this strike that killed Americans in Jordan. So that means they've had pretty close to 24 hours to get their messaging down. They had the Biden statement yesterday. So Karine Jean-Pierre shows up on MSNBC this morning from outside the White House, and all she's really trying to do is express condolences to the families of the fallen in this terrorist attack. And she's completely incapable of doing it, but in the process says something that Joe Biden has actually stumbled into before in his presidency as well, in suggesting that American forces are fighting for him, or his, in this case, his administration.
What I will say, obviously our deepest condolences go out, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf of this administration, of the American people, obviously more importantly.
Jim, that could have been 2 sentences. It sounds like a college student trying to get to that 1,000-word mark for their paper. But, I mean, what do you make of her complete inability to articulate a thought, and then also probably a Freudian slip there suggesting that these troops are specifically fighting for Joe Biden?
Yeah, look, we all have moments where we're less articulate than we'd like to be. Listeners to this podcast get to hear at least me doing it probably about 5 times a week. But that's really bad. You really don't want to insinuate or suggest that the military is fighting on behalf of administration as opposed to fighting on behalf of a country. That's really bad. And the rest of the answer, she's kind of stammering through, and it's tough. You're talking about the deaths of Americans, but she's really bad at this. She's really bad at this. And when Jen Psaki announced she was departing as White House press secretary, my colleague Michael Brendan Doherty said she was really good at the job, and we're going to miss her. And what are you talking? MBD. What do you think? And now you look at Karine Jean-Pierre, and you're like, oh, okay. She makes Jen Psaki look like Euripides, look like Socrates, this brilliant speaker, in part, not just because of the gaffes which happen, you misspeak, but she tends to, it does almost feel like a Freudian slip, this idea of perceiving the military as fighting on behalf of Biden and the administration instead of as fighting on behalf of the country as a whole, which I think is a reflective of like the us versus them, just down to the bone marrow level partisanship that is just part of the mentality of this administration and everything it does.
It's incompetence, it's partisanship, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the military does, and it's not ready for prime time, and this is a prime time moment that you have to be ready for. And she clearly wasn't, and it's not an isolated incident, as we have documented many, many times. All right, let's talk about another great sponsor, and that is 4Patriots. You want to go to 4patriots.com/martini, and that's where you're going to find fantastic deals on a whole bunch of different products. Some of the ones they've got going on there right now include plant-based protein survival food kits, 50% off. And we've told you about the Sauna Wrap therapeutic blanket at a massive discount right now, regularly $499. Right now, it's yours for just $99.20. Hard to beat that deal. But don't forget, of course, about the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. We're still in winter. Protect yourself against those winter storms if the power goes out. Make sure that your fundamental appliances, the fridge, the freezer, medical devices, and a whole lot more are ready to go regardless of whether your house has power. Doesn't need gas, comes with a solar panel, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our final martini. It's bad and it's crazy. Ilhan Omar speaking up at perhaps the worst possible time. And these comments actually came on Saturday, so they weren't in the wake of the deaths of Americans at the hands of Islamic terrorists in Jordan. But she was speaking to some sort of Somali group. I assume this is back in her home district in Minnesota, which has a large Somali population. And I could play the audio, but it's not in English, so it doesn't do you a lot of good. But you can certainly find it on Twitter and other places if you look for it with the subtitles. And there's a few different parts here that are very, very odd. First of all, she says that everyone in the room and in the community ought to be Somali first and Muslim second. I guess Americans didn't make the top two, and maybe it'll compete for the bronze. Somehow I doubt it. And then later, she talks about how she pretty much wants to reconstitute some sort of notion of the appropriate size of Somalia, basically indicating that Djibouti and Kenya and other places around the Horn of Africa are really Somali territory and really ought to be. We need to work towards that. She considers herself a voice for Somalia in Congress instead of her district in Minnesota. And so, I mean, Jim, this is the woman who said some people did something on 9/11. She's obviously been stripped of her Foreign Relations Committee seat and the access to confidential classified information because, well, let's be honest, we can't necessarily trust her, and this is certainly not helping her cause much. But what do you make of Omar's latest gem here?
My understanding is that Americans and extremists are playing in the bronze medal game. Determine. By the way, like, I think of myself as a very bad Catholic. I'm not even Muslim, and I'm offended on behalf of Muhammad. Don't you feel like, most people would say, I think it was, Mike Pence put it well, he sees himself as a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order when he was trying to talk about his values and what he prioritized. And I always thought that was a pretty good way of looking at the big questions in life. Your mileage may vary. I don't mean you, Greg. I mean listeners, mileage may vary, but fine. But the idea of saying our national identity is more important than our religious identity. I guess I could say, good for you, Ilhan Omar, for suggesting that something should be more important than Allah. I don't know if many Muslims will agree with that. And I look forward to seeing the reception to that. The second thing that I just kind of think jumps out about this is that I haven't heard a single Democrat, I haven't heard a single member of the squad issue anything. I think everyone in the Democratic Party has just kind of learned to avert their eyes from this. They've been through enough controversies with this, and they've seen Ilhan Omar say we talked in the last one about Karine Jean-Pierre. At least Karine Jean-Pierre is like speaking off the cuff, and it just comes out terribly. In this case with Ilhan Omar, it's deliberate. This is prepared remarks. This is very much what she wants to say. This is not accidentally getting tongue-tied and the wrong thing comes out. This is deliberately her message and presumably what she actually believes. Leading to this denunciation. And I'm just thinking, there are a lot of embarrassing members of Congress. Greg, is this any better or worse than the antics of Lauren Boebert? Is this any better or worse than what we get from Marjorie Taylor Greene? My argument is I don't see that. And whenever Marjorie Taylor Greene or Boebert or Matt Gaetz or any one of the reality TV show stars in waiting who do things for click. Like, yeah, there's a lot of, lunatic fringe on the Republican side, but there's just as much on the Democratic side. You just don't get the coverage of this. And something like this is a really good, vivid example of this, that even by the standards of extremists, Ilhan Omar is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I think that even other extremists find her kind of embarrassing. So I suspect the attitude of the squad and everybody else will be just pretend these things didn't happen. Pretend you didn't hear it. Oh, I don't understand the translation of it. That's what we're going to get from this. But we notice this. And there's this dominant narrative going on that the Republicans are this extreme party and that the Democrats are all these, sensible, centrist moderates who just want to make the world a better place. No, they have their lunatic fringe too. It's just embarrassing to Democrats, so it doesn't get nearly as much attention.
I would dispute the fact that she's in the same level as some of the folks that you mentioned. They're very embarrassing, in my opinion, getting groped in public.
Technically, we don't get. Here's the thing: we're not as embarrassed by Ilhan Omar because we don't feel any, even lingering residual sense of responsibility. If Ilhan Omar claimed to be a conservative, we would feel more embarrassed because she would claim to be speaking on behalf of us, and you could find, one lunatic fringe commentator after another out there. They're not that hard to find. But
yeah, there's plenty of folks on the right who I don't have a lot of respect for, and you certainly name them. But none of them, as far as I know, have claimed primary allegiance to another country. As a member of what's the first thing you do as a member of Congress? Yes.
Would you take an oath on that Constitution? It's not just there under glass at the National Archives because it's like this old historical relic. It's supposed to be active today. It's supposed to be used. And I guess the obvious thing is she takes the oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, and then goes out and says we must think of ourselves as Somalis first. You're saying you don't even think of yourself as American first.
Right.
What are you doing here? Yeah. So.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. So yeah.
I think even Bob Menendez would say, "Whoa, that's some loyalty issues." I'm just selling out my country. I'm not actually loyal to the Egyptians, although I stay bought. That's my code of honor.
Are there gold bars involved? That's really the standard that he goes by. And
you got any Cougarons? Any of those?
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep them coming. They really are a big help to us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Monday and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.